by the way, everybody's looking for some hope. And there is no better passage of Scripture than this pericope of Scripture this morning. From the first 11 verses, I want to pin this text with this thought. The muted message. The muted message.
Yes, sir.
I thought when I was watching throughout this week carefully some of the things that were transpiring both in our nation and internationally, that I couldn't help but notice that there were individuals all over the world who indeed were seeking some hope. Go with me for just a moment according to the historicity behind this biblical text, and let's take a look at what was transpiring early on in the middle of the first century. It is believed that it is perhaps somewhere around 50 to 60 AD. And indeed, something has transpired. As a matter of fact, this writer is recording some information that happened in the life of the Christ. Can you imagine just for a moment that God has looked at humanity and discovered once again that humanity has become so corrupt that it needed some drastic change? God has always designed a format and a way for us to get out of the situation. He's always, even when there are turbulent times, already gone ahead of us to make sure that we can escape, provided we turn back to Him. Imagine here as this great rabbi has begun to make his pilgrimage towards Jerusalem. For those of us who studied the canon, the Protestant canon, our Bible, as we've studied the life of Christ, we couldn't help but notice that in this particular week there are some individuals who are troubled. They are troubled because Rome, that great seat of power and authority, has somehow begun to oppress individuals who lay claims to following God. It almost sounds familiar with the 21st century. There are still naysayers in the world who would suggest that religion is just one of those things that people practice when they're in pain. So Karl Marx suggested that it had become an opium for the people. It was something that was used so that somehow it could deaden the pain of a difficult and challenging situation. Come with me, if you will. For the text wants us to understand that Jesus has just completed his Galilean ministry. And those of you who've been anywhere near a church, anywhere near a place of worship, have discovered that Jesus had a tendency to always make his way back to the synagogue. No matter when you followed his ministry, whether it was a Galilean ministry or whether it was in fact that distance or geographical location between the Galilean ministry and Jerusalem. And you and I both know that that place is called Jericho. Jericho has always been that place between a place where you can be blessed and the place that you just came from. For some of us, we stayed in Jericho just a little bit too long. When I looked at this text and began to take a look at how I can present this subject matter, the muted message, because I wanted to understand what was the real message that God wanted to convey on this Palm Sunday. And I discovered the muted message. Because while watching the television just a few days ago, a few weeks ago, I couldn't help but notice that every time a message was being conveyed to the audience, there was always someone on the sideline that was signing.
Come on, sir. Preach, sir.
You couldn't hear what the person was saying that was signing because it was muted. And so somehow, in the context of the person attempting to convey a message, though for those of us who were incapable of reading sign language, we were able to hear the audio so that somehow we could get a clear understanding of what was being said. Come, go with me. Because this biblical text wants you to understand that in these first 11 verses, I want to address with you a few C's. And the first seed, according to this muted language that I want to convey with you on this Palm Sunday, is that when he arrives here towards Jerusalem, there are two cities. That's your first seed. There are two cities, and these cities that are just miles away from Jerusalem are called Bethphage and Bethany. One is referred to, technically, in its Greek sense, the house of figs. And the other is considered the house of dates. And as you watch and listen carefully, because you do know that as he arrives here in the house of figs and the house of dates, in these two cities there is an obvious allusion to the fact that there is suffering on the outskirts of Jerusalem. And so I questioned the author. I talked with Mark, and Mark conveyed to me that it was not by accident that these things transpired, that Jesus was moving towards this pivotal position in Jerusalem. Now think about it for a moment. This is Palm Sunday. We are one Sunday away from that great resurrection Sunday. Everything that's done here in the confines of your canon was not done accidentally. God has this uncanny ability of making sure that everything that's done is necessary leading up to this pivotal point that's going to happen next Sunday. And so when we look here at this biblical text and watch that he's caught up in a city, he is taking time before he gets to his destination to make sure that there are individuals who have been left out, are exposed to the ability and the challenge that God wants to offer them salvation along the way. I suggest to you this morning that God even now is offering in every city salvation to anyone who's willing to accept it. I suggest to you that the muted message may have been something that others were incapable of hearing, but God is giving an opportunity, or has given an opportunity, and is now giving an opportunity for individuals to make their way again to the Christ. I said there were seeds I wanted to remind you of this morning. One are the two cities, Bethany and Bethphage. And another seed that stood out for me was the colt. The colt that seems to be here in the city. The boys have just made their way into the city. They are moving towards Jerusalem. And it has become blatantly obvious to historians that there is something that has transpired long before now. For it's obvious that Jesus has been in Jerusalem before, because now he's given the secret password. So that somehow when they arrive in the city to receive the colt, if they are questioned as to what's going to happen, just inform them that the master has need of the colt. The theological suggestion to us today is that God is suggesting to every one of us, even though we may appear useless, even though we may appear as a minute individual, God is saying to all of us, I want to use you. In spite of what's transpiring around you, I want to use you. And so they go to the city and untie the colt and bring it to Jesus, and the celebration begins. The city, the colt, the celebration. Now think about this for a moment, because according to the biblical text, so often when we read Hosanna, our immediate assumption is that this is better rendered hallelujah. This appears to be a time of celebration when they are singing Hosanna. And the truth of the matter is that the interpretation of the word Hosanna is not hallelujah, but save now. The individuals who are supposed to be a part of the household of faith, the individuals who are supposed to be following God, are in trouble, and they recognize that they can do nothing about the troubled situation, and so they are now crying out to God, save now. They are in a predicament that they can't get themselves out of, and they are asking for help from Yahweh. God, save now. And the centrality of the message for them is the same one that we have today. Many of us are asking God, in the midst of what we are facing, save now. We can't wait until next week or from now. But those of us who have faith in you, God, would you be kind enough to save us right now? The truth of the matter is that these people are as troubled as many are today. There are individuals who are living with a sense of hopelessness, individuals who are so challenged and troubled and they don't know what to do. They are depressed at home. They feel like they've been ostracized from the world, and we are crying out to God, save now. And I said I wanted to make sure that you understand that there are seeds that stand out in the text. I cannot leave you with just a city that is bombarded with the masses of people who are moving towards this city, towards Jerusalem. I cannot leave you with just a colt that was once tied up, but now has been delivered from his being tied up. I cannot leave you with just a note of celebration. I must move you strategically now to the Christ. I have to move us to help us understand that God is asking us somehow if we can ever recognize the presence and the power in the Christ. We can move away from the cities that have so captured us. We can move away from being tied up in our own situation. We can begin to celebrate knowing that the Christ is with us in the midst of our challenges. And that's the message for us this morning. There is a message in the mutiny. God is speaking out to us, though we sometimes don't understand his voice. So though sometimes we don't hear it, sometimes we have negated the power in his voice, in the mutedness of his voice. God is speaking to all of us, for the 11th verse informs you in the text that Jesus now makes his way to the temple. The world is crying out for a sense of hope. The world is crying out for an opportunity to show up in a place where they can have some hope and know that there is authority that is higher than they. That's going to give them something that says it's all going to be all right. How dare us indeed not at least give an opportunity for a few folk to show up in a place of worship so that somehow we can convey a message to our audience and help them to understand whatever you do, don't give up hope. Know that God is there for you in the midst of your challenge. It may appear that it's muted, his voice is muted, but God has shown up. And I leave you this day with this thought. We always assume that we know interpreted what the text says. But when Jesus arrived in the city on the coast, there is a hidden message. For according to the book of Zechariah, according to the Old Testament in Zechariah 9 and 9, it would suggest that there was something that was going to happen that was far greater than anything that they had anticipated. And so in the midst of the challenges, in the midst of the turmoil, God was assuring them that I'm going to come, but the message will be muted. Today in the 21st century, the message has been muted, but God is saying, I'm going to show up to help you so that you can get through it. And so whereas we look at this biblical text and we see that there is indeed this Messiah that's showing up, but he never says that I am the Messiah. He just makes a muted message. He shows up riding on a colt of all the things. Not a stallion, but a colt. A king would ride into a town on a horse, a steed, which says I'm victorious over war. But Jesus rides in on a colt. He is saying in a muted message, I'm coming to give you peace in the midst of turmoil. And so my brothers and sisters, I just stopped by to help somebody understand that it looks bad, but there is a message in the mutedness. And God is coming to deliver all of us from a horrible situation. Forget what the naysayers say. Just put your hope in the God who's greater than your situation. Amen. Amen. It is the muted message. Father, we thank you for the privilege of reassuring us again that you're the God who indeed oversees everything. You recognize our pain. You recognize our suffering. You see our challenges. And God, we're grateful that you have the power to do something about it. Bless your people today. Help them to hear your message. And your message is to seek Jesus. Seek Jesus and be saved. It's in the name of Christ Jesus we pray. If this morning you were at home and our living God has spoken specifically to you, it is a good time for you to drop to your knees. If you can't drop to your knees, you can stand right where you are. And you can just lift up your hands and ask God to come into your heart, to bless you, to forgive you of your sins, and acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. And then turn your life over to Him. God is willing to save your soul. The Lord be with you and bless you and keep you. Choir, if you will come and bless us.